Obviously, we've had two very difficult games against them the past two contests, both into the fourth quarter, and offensively had to make a drive down there 2 years ago, and last year had to have a 4th-and-1 stop to secure the victory.
Last week was last week. You get 24 hours to enjoy it, but then you got to move on.
Our goal wasn't to be ranked. Our goal is to play for a championship, and this week is to be 1-0.
And, I don't think anybody cares about being ranked. Nobody cares. All we care about is being 1-0.
And welcome back into the Tiger Kickoff Show, presented by the Columbia Missourian. I am your host, Harrison Vapnek from KOMU Sports, joined alongside the beat writers of the MU football team, Wendell Shepherd, Adam Ryerson, Brandon Haynes. Style points once again, 4-0 style points. Trying to get to 5-0. I got them out today, the blue shades. It's hiding the tears, actually. It's been a tough afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Dame time.
I actually don't think that's funny at all. I didn't even know that was coming. So
For those who don't know, Damian Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Harrison over here is a Miami Heat fan. Thought he would have
I thought he was
Damian
coming
Lillard.
since like the beginning of July, and I've just been waiting, and now he's going to our arch rivals, the Milwaukee Bucks. But this isn't the Damian Lillard kickoff show. This is the Tiger Kickoff Show. So plenty of talk about with the Tigers and the Commodores getting ready to play this Saturday from Nashville. Mizzou is in the AP Top 25 for the first time since October 2019. But that game, they were in the Top 25. On the road at Vanderbilt, came up short 21-14. Feels like a lot of the fan base very paranoid about this game because of the similarities, how they were back in the top 25 on the road at Vanderbilt. I think a backup quarterback, too, for the Commodores that week, and they slipped up. A lot of similarities because of how much paranoia there is with the fans right now. Is Missouri on upset watch against Vanderbilt on Saturday, Wendell?
I really don't think so. I think there's a large gap between these two teams. I learned firsthand the other day how much trauma this fan base has with backup quarterbacks. I tweeted that A.J. Swan is probably going to be out for this game. I got a whole lot of quote tweets like, oh no, we've seen this movie before, it's over. But no, I think Mizzou's going to handle business.
Adam, do you think that the Tigers are even on upset watch, or how can they possibly avoid an upset to Vanderbilt, who Missouri on paper looks a lot better than?
I think they just have to stay disciplined and play their game. I don't think that this is going to be an upset watch. I don't think it's a look-ahead game, though. I do think that they have to win this game, obviously, and they have had close games against Vandy in the past, but I think most of the fear from the fans is just the fact that, from my understanding, is that Mizzou fans have kind of been groomed for failure in spots like this. So I really don't blame the fans for feeling the way that they're feeling, but I think that this is a good spot for Mizzou to be in.
But it's like we talked about on Monday, like what makes this team different? This doesn't have to be like past Mizzou teams who they start 4-0, then they have this road SEC game, and they stumble and finish 2-6 the rest of the way. Like this team could be different. And Brandon, the way this team has played over the last two games, especially against Kansas State and Memphis, it's a much different team. And you talked about how they kind of really need to play their game better before the show.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you just got to go in and obviously play your own game, kind of set the tone. Missouri sometimes gets behind, and that's when you kind of see the struggles. We saw it against Middle Tennessee when they don't come out and start strong. So against Vanderbilt, especially against a defense that is banged up, hasn't looked great, you just got to go out there and kind of play your own game, set the standard, and just build from there. I don't think there's much to really worry about against a Vanderbilt team, even with the backup quarterback. Mizzou has seen Ken Seals before 2 years ago, so they have at least experience of knowing what he may look like. It'll be a similar style quarterback. The receivers are something to look at, especially with Mizzou's secondary, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But overall, I don't think there's too much to worry about just as long as they come out strong and just stay consistent.
I think you guys saying, oh, you guys shouldn't worry, we're fine, I think it's going to make the fan base even more scared about this game. It's like, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Then they proceed to lose at Vanderbilt for the first time, I think, since 2019. The quarterback you mentioned, Ken Seals, 8 starts in 2021, 9 in the 2020 season. This isn't a true freshman being thrown into the fire. This is a guy who has 4 or 5 years of college football experience, and this is a Vanderbilt receiver room that Coach Drinkwitz has credited pretty good. Guys like Will Shepherd, London Humphreys, and Jaden McGowan, like, these aren't nobodies. Like, this is, in Missouri, the last 2 years against Vanderbilt, 17-14 last year, held on for dear life at the end with a late 4th-and-1 stop. And the game down in Nashville when it was Connor Bazelak went down, they needed Tyler Macon to come in the fourth quarter and lead them to a win. In terms of this specific matchup, what are some individual kind of little things that we're looking for, Wendell, on this one?
One thing I'm looking for, and one thing I think that will be crucial going into SEC play, especially against tougher teams, is being able to pick up third downs and stop the other team on third downs. If defensively they weren't too bad this past week, I think I believe 8 for 17, holding Memphis on third downs, but 0 for 8 on offense. And, they still had over 500 yards. We talked about it Monday. I think that's something they are going to have to figure out before, you face Georgia's, Kentucky's, Florida's. So that's what I'll be watching for.
We talked a lot about the secondary, Adam, about injuries and that. We'll find out more later in the week and who's playing and who's not. And that Vandy receiver room is not bad. Talk about that matchup specifically.
Yeah, there's going to be several different looks that we could see from the Missouri secondary, even with healthy players and not healthy players who they decide to put at the nickel position, stuff like that. But this, we've talked about it already. I mean, we've basically only talked about the Vandy passing game. It's really good. And they've got 3 receivers in the top 12 of SEC receiving yard leaders. The Missouri defense is going to have to be much better, especially in man-to-man coverage, and that's an area where they have really not been great all year long. In third down situations, fourth down situations, and in the red zone, they've been really poor against in defense. And all of those situations, there's one thing that's in common in all of them, is that you're running a man defense. Drinkwitz said during the press conference yesterday that 3 of the 8 touchdowns that Mizzou has allowed in the red zone came directly from miscommunication and missing assignments on man coverage. So that's something that they're going to have to clean up. But I do think that we haven't seen the best from this Missouri defense, and they've done just enough to win each game. And I think that this is a great spot, especially going up against a backup quarterback and a struggling Vandy team, to really see how dominant this Missouri defense is.
Brandon, flip the script a little. The Mizzou wide receivers has been probably the strength of the team. Luther Burden is playing like one of the best receivers in all of college football. We've seen impressive outings from Theo Weiss. Marquis Johnson, we'll talk about in a little bit, has come along. Talk about their advantage against and also banged up Vandy secondary.
Yeah, most of the conversation is obviously centered around Mizzou's secondary and their injuries, but Vandy's also dealing with that. Last week against Kentucky, they played without their top 3 safeties. All of them are questionable to play, leaning towards playing, so I would assume to see them also without one of their top cornerbacks. So those are areas obviously Mizzou can exploit. Now Mizzou is dealing with injuries at its own receiver position. We already know Mekhi Miller's not going to play. That was announced by Drink on Tuesday. Also, though, Luther Burden's questionable. How much play will he get is a serious question mark against Vandy's secondary. If Luther Burden's out there, I wouldn't worry too much. But if you get an offense without Luther and then you get Vandy's defense back, which actually didn't play that bad against Kentucky, although the final score may look like that, 3 of those touchdowns practically came as the result of turnovers. So 2 pick sixes and 1 was returned to the 11-yard line. So Vandy's defense didn't play bad. So it's just something to look at as they start to usher in some new guys again.
Do we think, this is for all of you, do you think the Tigers offense can keep this up? 400 total yards of offense against Vanderbilt, over 500, or against Kansas State, I should say, over 500 last week against Memphis. Is this sustainable? The offense can continue to put up these incredible numbers?
I think so. I think there's room for continued production, like I mentioned earlier. If you don't convert a single third down, you're giving the ball back to the other team so often. I think if they pick up some of those, extend drives longer, that helps the offense and the defense stay off the field.
Adam?
Yeah, I think that if we can see the Missouri defense start playing like they were predicted to be playing throughout the season, during the offseason, people were predicting that. I think that the offense can even have more production, like Wendell was saying. I think that they haven't even reached the threshold of what they can do, especially because they've had to lean so heavily on the running game in the fourth quarter, which is what you want. You want to close out the game on the ground. But I still think that they've won the possession battle in the last 2 weeks with 3 interceptions. But I still don't think that the defense has been able to get off the field. And like Wendell said, the more your defense is off the field, the more your offense is on the field. More yards are going to come, more points are going to come. So I think there's still improvement.
Brandon, you agree?
Yeah, I also think, though, that Mizzou's running game just has to remain consistent. I think that's a big thing when you look at how many yards they can produce, whether or not Cody Schrader can keep up the pace of leading the SEC in rushing or just coming close to it, especially being against SEC defenses. It's a little different. I think I also want to see some more of Nathaniel Pete just out of the backfield. I think his explosiveness could really be something that does keep that yardage up, and we didn't really see it too much against Memphis, but as we enter some of these tougher defenses, maybe Schrader's running style won't match up as well as Pete's will against the defenses. So I just think looking at those types of matchups will kind of help the offense continue their trend of 400, 500-yard games.
Cody Tritter, leading rusher in all the SEC. We're now going to turn to what our writers are writing about this week in their features that'll be up on the Columbia Missourian later this week. Wendell, I know you're focusing in on a player who's been a major breakout for the Tigers, a true freshman that nobody's expected. Talk about Marquis Johnson a little bit.
Yeah, Marquis Johnson, we've been told, is the fastest receiver on this team. Probably the fastest player on the team. Was a state champion last year in Texas in the 100-meter dash. Second in the 200. He's a speedster, and I think with the wide receiver injuries that Mizzou's kind of dealing with, this could be a breakout game for him against Vanderbilt. Just a freak of nature athlete, and he's going to be exciting to watch.
Adam, we've talked a ton about the defense. You kind of dove into them ahead of this matchup against Vanderbilt. What should we know about Blake Baker's side of the group?
I think the thing that people should know is that the defense can get better. I did a real deep dive into some glaring stats about third, fourth down, and in the red zone. I talked about what they've done well in. Missouri's actually one of 3 teams yet to allow a rushing touchdown. So there's still some positives about this Missouri defense, but I highlight a lot of what they could do better and what fans should look for to see them improve on throughout the season.
Brandon, you did the game preview. Tell us something that maybe the casual fan or even those who know both the Tigers and the Commodores well wouldn't specifically know about this matchup.
Yeah, so obviously Wendell's talking about Marquis Johnson and being the track athlete he is. London Humphreys, the wide receiver for Vanderbilt, also a track star in high school, kind of stood out. He's got blazing speed, leads the SEC in yardage per completion as far as getting downfield. He's had some 50-yard catches. So I think what Mizzou fans have seen from Marquis Johnson, they need to worry about from London Humphreys. And I just think that's something that you just got to keep an eye on. Obviously, it may be a backup quarterback, maybe A.J. Swan. We'll see kind of how it goes. But either way, you just got to be prepared and on your heels if you're Missouri to face a similar level talent to Marquis.
Yep. Let's turn to our game picks. If you've been picking Missouri so far this season, you're pretty successful. Brandon and I. Sorry, guys, we're haters during the Kansas State game. It's okay. Wendell, I'll start with you. You're rolling with the Tigers to avoid the upset in Nashville on Saturday.
Yes, I'm taking Mizzou by multiple scores.
Any exact number? Or?
I'll say by 17 at least.
Okay. Adam?
I'm going to go Mizzou to cover. We're going to go 38-17.
Yeah, Missouri over a 2-touchdown favorite. Brandon, you going 3 for 3?
Yeah, I'm going to go Missouri as well. As far as the score, I was pretty close last week.
You were, weren't you right on 34? Oh, they scored at the end today.
Yeah,
I had 27-20. We were sitting at that in the fourth quarter. I texted you 3. I'm like, hey, I might pull it off again.
Yeah. Had Memphis not scored that final touchdown, would have had the score right last week. I'll go 41-24. Just sounds right.
Okay. You guys mentioned before how Tiger fans should feel comfortable, and that's probably going to make them feel even more nervous. I will be the 4th person to say that I am not super nervous about Missouri heading into this game. I'm picking the Tigers. I think this is a big game from the defense. They forced a couple turnovers. They held Vanderbilt under a couple touchdowns. I'll say Missouri wins it 33-13. Blake Baker's defense with their first real strong outing of the season. Travis, you can put it up 4 for 4 on there. 4 Tiger heads. Brandon and I staying 4-0.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
And Missouri, that number next to the Tigers looks nice at the top. And hopefully it can stay on there for some weeks to come. And it's not like Vanderbilt in 2019.
Yeah.
It's going to scare some fans.
We'll see what happens, but, we'll be optimistic.
We'll be optimistic.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been
LSU the
optimistic
following
picking a
week.
lot of
LSU the
Tigers
following.
this year. LSU, next week, we might have to get some Cajun food. I know Adam Ryerson has been promoting for another taste test on the Tiger Kickoff Show this week.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like a little crawdad broil. So
Hey, crawfish, we'll give it a try. Well, that is our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Tiger Kickoff Show. We'll be back next Monday to recap the Tigers and the Commodores and begin to preview a huge matchup at the end of next week between Missouri and LSU. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Tiger Kickoff Show.